Welcome to the podcast.
歡迎收聽
요거서 팟캐스트에
به پادکست ما خوش آمد.
بروכים הבאים לפודקאסט 欢迎来到我们的播客
Benvenuti sul podcast.
Willkommen beim Podcast.
日本から konnichiwa
Buongiorno
你
dall'Italia.
好嚟自香港
Hello from New York.
Hallo aus Deutschland.
Shalom Israel
Hello, world culture enthusiasts. We are back with another episode of Crossing Cultures, a podcast where guests from all over the world talk about subtle, surprising, intriguing, and bizarre cultural differences in everyday life. My name is Asaf, and today we have a treat for all of you, because today we're going to talk about pets and animals with these amazing guests from Brazil, Hong Kong, Italy, and the United States. How about you guys introduce yourselves? We'll start with...
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm from Brazil. I'm 28.
Do you have a pet?
Not anymore. I used to. I had a dog for 16 years.
What was his or her name?
His name was Tobias Afonso.
Again?
Tobias Afonso. And I got him when I was 10, and I wanted to give him a very dramatic sounding name, so I could Tobias Afonso, don't do that. Don't
It's
be
like
on
when
the
your parents
couch.
use the middle name.
Yeah.
What does that name mean?
Nothing. I think I got it from, a list of baby names, but they both sound very old. It would be Tobias Alfonso, and if you were to pronounce it
And was he?
If we want to dumb it down for Americans.
Was he? Did he act his name?
Yeah, totally. He did. He was a little lord. He would ignore people on the street. People would be like, "Oh, can I pet your dog?" And I was like, "Sure." And he would just walk past everyone with his little head held high. And he was the best dog. He was very full of personality, and I loved him. But he got very old.
I guess that happens. All right, our next guest.
Hi, I'm Jonathan. I'm 29. I guess pets. So I still have a dog.
Mm-hmm.
He's 4 months away from being 18.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Small dog?
No, he's not a small. Well, medium size. His mother was a golden retriever.
Wow.
Usually the small, the ones that live the longest are the small ones.
small.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what his father was. He's black. He looks like a terrier, not a golden retriever.
Uh-huh.
And previously I also had a cat that we lived with, that we adopted back in Hong. I come from Hong Kong, so I came to Israel about 7 years ago, and it's obviously 18-year-old dog. I had him for 11 years when I was in Hong Kong. He came with us to Israel as well as the cat, and so the dog is called Choco, which was a unique name in Hong Kong, because nobody calls their dog Choco in Hong Kong. Here, every dog is Choco.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
And the cat similarly was called Mitzi.
Mitzi. All right,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And also from Hong Kong.
Also from Hong Kong.
Okay.
Mitzi is a very common
Mitzi
Israeli
is the
name.
quintessential cat name.
Exactly.
You brought the cat also with you too?
Yeah, both of us we adopted in Hong Kong, and they came with us to Israel here.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Michael. I'm Italian. I currently have a cat. I've had already a cat in the past, and I had a hamster with the same kind of concept name as yours. It's called Victor Franz.
Oh, that's amazing.
I got him from my sister when I used to live with a lot of friends, musicians of mine in the academy, and I wanted to give him a musical name, and my other flatmate wanted to give a strong name. So Franz for Franz Schubert, which is one of the composers, and Victor Franz sounded fantastic because it sounds like a Prussian, emperor.
Yeah,
And so
of course.
basically that.
Amazing.
And I used to have one of my a cat that died about a year ago, my childhood cat, and one that I have now here in Israel. That her name is Taika.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, I'm Yoni. I grew up in the United States and always grew up with dogs around. When my earliest memory of a pet is having a bird. My parents had a bird in our kitchen. Had a gerbil at one point, and just about a year and a half ago I adopted a dog here.
And where are you from originally in the States?
From Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll just pitch in. I used to have a dog. His name was Plier. Like the tool. You know? I don't know. I named him. I don't know why. And then we had a cat. He was half black, half white, so we called him Jackson. Like Michael Jackson. And now a few weeks ago, I adopted a rescue dog. And
A pit bull.
So you're like,
pit bull.
let's do
Yeah.
an episode on
Sorry.
pets.
exactly.
It's
And
time.
I thought I'd do an episode. Even though she is a pit bull, she has the shape of a pit bull, but the personality of a hedgehog.
How old
She
is
does
she?
nothing but like curl up into a ball and sit in the corner. That's all she does all day.
How old is she?
We don't know. She's probably around 4, something like that. We took her from the pound. But yeah, we had a gerbil, and we've had a dog and a cat and some birds. And have you ever had fish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
No, never actually.
never.
Never understood.
It's the perfect training pet.
Yeah, but it's really impressive when you said having an 18-year-old dog. Yeah, that's a record here.
Yeah, call Guinness, like, enter him in the book.
All right, so why don't you guys tell me how common are pets where you guys come from?
Very common.
Quite common,
Like,
yeah. But it depends. In Italy, for example, most people have either cats at home or dogs. But the specific kind of dogs, it's not like here where in Israel that you get you find a dog on the street, a
Rescues,
rescue
yeah.
dog. It's mostly dogs that are like pedigree dogs. You find a lot of pedigree dogs in Italy, a lot. It's because it's a social status when you have a certain kind
Yeah.
of dog.
Mm.
And it's
and
interesting.
there are like trends, right? Like 2 years ago, everybody got a French.
French poodle,
French bulldog.
No, bulldog.
Yeah.
Yeah, French bulldog. Like everyone had one. It's kind of weird. This like trends in pets. At least in Brazil, I saw a lot of that.
You remember like
Right.
10 years ago when Paris Hilton, or 10 or 15 years ago when Paris Hilton used to have the small dogs?
This little
Yes.
chihuahuas.
Yeah.
Everybody
And
got
everyone had
chihuahuas.
chihuahuas.
That's true.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. And also, I think Ren and Stimpy had something to do with it.
You think so?
But I don't know. Yeah, that's my hunch. But you said the same thing, that in the U.S. it's more of having a dog that's a purebred or a pedigree dog is kind of a social status. It's more than having a mixed breed.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say so much it's social status, but it's just kind of not unheard of, because there is, there are shelters, there's the ASPCA that are doing these rescue missions, but most of families will have just purebred dog. That's the norm. You go, you find your breeder. They tell you when the litter is going to be ready. I'm talking like dogs mostly, because this is like the common household pet in the States. You see when your litter is going to be ready. You pick out the picture of the dog that you want, and then you pick it up or it's shipped to you.
So who gets dogs, like rescue dogs and dogs from the pounds, and who adopts dogs? I think in Israel it's a little bit more common to adopt a dog
Yeah.
Yeah,
than it
much
is
more
to
common.
get much more
Sure,
common.
much
Yeah,
more
and that's
common.
why we have a lot more mutts and mixed breeds. There's a little social taboo on like buying dogs.
I think I was
That
going to
is
say it's the
great.
opposite way around here.
I love it. I love that people here think badly of buying dogs. Like I know that there are great breeders in the world. Like some of them are very trustworthy and everything, but at least in Brazil, it's a big problem of like illegal breeders, and they mistreat the dogs. So I think the way is to adopt a dog. I love this culture
Absolutely.
here.
My father,
It's,
every time he comes back from Italy to visit, he enjoys the fact that all the dogs look happy here because they're happy. They're
Yeah.
dogs because the city is full of places for the dogs to go
Dog
out,
park.
and
And
they're not pedigree. They're
Yeah, and it could have been much worse too.
It could have been much worse.
And
all
it's
these
not,
dogs.
and it's not like that in Italy, because Tel Aviv specifically, I can only speak for Tel Aviv at
Yeah.
least, is a very, let's call it, dog-friendly city.
Oh my
There's
God.
parks everywhere. There's special designated areas where you can let your dog run free.
Almost every restaurant. Is
Almost
allowing
every, you can sit with your dog in a coffee shop or a restaurant. A lot of the workplaces are considered dog-friendly. You see a lot of pet shops and like places where you can buy food for your dog. Even some of the beaches allow dogs.
Yeah.
I don't know how it is in where you guys are from.
I actually have something to say about that, because in Hong Kong, unfortunately, there's one of the most, like, we have a street called Pet Street, where it's more like a district where on one of them, you just find lots of little fishes in small bags about this big, and it's absolute cruelty that people just go. In my opinion, that you can buy them like snacks or something. You put them in your, like. Most of these will not get bought and get thrown away at the end of the day.
Wow.
Wow. And these are sold as pets?
And these are sold as pets.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them don't get sold, and they just die in the bag and get thrown away. And
Shame.
unfortunately, the adjacent street sells dogs in small cages. And the problem with Hong Kong is that they're also seen as a status symbol.
Mm.
But most of the apartments in Hong Kong, 90% of the people who live in Hong Kong don't have just the logistical facility to take care of a dog. So they'll buy a dog for their kid or something, and they live in an apartment that's about, I don't know, 10, 20 square meters, and there's no room for the dog to go anywhere, and gets neglected. Eventually they buy a little cage to put in the corner. It's really sad. I don't think... And also Hong Kong has a big stray dog problem because the dogs get thrown out because of that.
Are they lucrative businesses even?
And lucrative businesses.
That's why then.
That's exactly why.
Yeah, because I was gonna say if you have options to take other business, you would.
Yeah.
So if people, I mean, why aren't cats more? Are cats common? Why aren't cats more common?
I don't know. Kind of like here in Israel and Tel Aviv, especially, you have lots of street cats.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like in the rural areas in Hong Kong. You have lots of stray dogs. They're more dangerous, obviously. They form packs sometimes and things like that. But I think also Hong Kong. When I lived in Hong Kong, I don't know if this is the case, but I did notice there are lots of birds of prey, large eagles and things like that. And I think they prey on. I wouldn't quote me on this, but I think that I'm just theorizing that's one of the reasons we don't see a lot of stray cats in Hong Kong.
Interesting. I mean, you've all seen. Tel Aviv is dominated by stray cats.
Of course.
Yeah.
I think it has something to do with the climate, because I think cats love hot weather or hot climate.
There's this.
I thought it was the
And Hong Kong
story
is
was
Yeah, there's this urban myth, right?
the urban myth, the one that I know, that 70 years ago when Tel Aviv was starting to really form, there was a big rat problem, and that's what I've heard.
And they brought in cats. Now we have a cat.
I mean,
problem.
that might be true. But I'm guessing it could be true, but that wouldn't explain why even today there are many more cats than dogs. I think it's a cultural reason, because people are, they find it more difficult to throw away the dog.
Maybe.
And when you have a dog, if you don't want him anymore, you take him to a pound, or you take it to someone else. And I think a cat is a little bit more independent, so the cat might just even run away.
I don't know, Michael might disagree.
But first of all, there's a stigma. Every time I say that I have a cat here in Tel Aviv, you say,
like,
really? I'm like,
Really?
what?
That's my reaction.
But I know a lot of people here that have
It's
cats.
not that a lot of people have cats here, but because there are so many, street cats around, most people see the cat as something that either like something disgusting, like a rat, basically.
Uh-huh.
It's like you have a rat in your house.
No.
No, I don't think so.
I agree with you, obviously, but
Well,
still,
there
that's
is a
what lot of people
stigma.
think.
There is a stigma in Israel about cats. I'm sure it's. I don't know if it's only in Israel, but in Israel, we think of the cat as the pet that only the crazy cat lady would have.
Thank you.
Okay, it's a more feminine. It's a more feminine animal, and also, there's a saying that if you have a dog in your house, then the dog is your pet. If you have a cat in your house, then you are the pet.
Of course.
But this is kind of true.
That's very true.
It's very true.
They're the boss.
Very true.
It's
no,
true.
no. I pay rent, but she's the owner.
She's
of
the owner, of course.
She's written on the contract.
I've read this article about something called contra freeloading. Have you ever heard that term?
No.
Contra freeloading is a concept in psychology, and it applies to all animals, where an animal or a person would rather work for their food than have it served to them. And they tested this. They've tested it on dogs, on humans. Like, a human would rather earn something than be given it to. And it's true for animals, for lions. It's true for birds. It's even true for fish. The only animal that it doesn't apply to is the house cat, which prefers to be served without working. So that says a lot about your choice too. I mean, I think it's benevolent to have a cat. You know.
Sometimes
doing
I
a
come
good
back
service.
home after work, and I'm all dressed up after a concert. So I'm a violinist, so I have to dress up in black or suit and everything like that. And sometimes she's at home, so she's hungry or I forgot to feed her or something like that, and I'll serve her with my suit because I have no other way around.
Like the true
And my
butler.
cat is the happiest cat in Tel Aviv at that time because that's how they're supposed to be served.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like
Exactly.
my servant is putting on his nice clothes.
Do you
Exactly.
put on the white gloves to serve, properly serve
I have
the
them
queen?
with the
I have them in the
cloth over
drawer
Yeah.
it.
sometimes if it's a special occasion.
What about the kinds of breeds that you see where you guys are from? Because whenever I walk down the streets of Tel Aviv, I am just shocked by the amount of huskies and Alaskan Malamutes and Saint Bernards.
So
And I
many
always think,
huskies here.
why would you bring a dog that is, designed or bred to live in the snow to a
the
city
desert.
like Tel Aviv where it's hot 300 days of the
But
year?
also in Brazil, like São Paulo, the coldest it gets, when it gets really cold, it's like 10 degrees.
Yeah.
That is like super cold. And people have lots of huskies. I think the most popular is the Labrador and Golden Retrievers. Like they are all around. But people have all kinds of dogs, like really big ones, massive fur. And
What do you think the appeal is? Why do people have
Because they're beautiful. I
'Cause
mean, they
they're
are
very-
beautiful
and
dogs.
cuddly, and you can like roll around the ground with them and sleep on them and love them.
And
forever.
huskies specifically,
Yeah.
I mean, that's also, I wanted to actually bring that up before.
Mhm.
Because of all the things, a lot of people love to get, half-breeds and everything, apart from the husky. You see a lot of
Full breed
huskies
Yeah.
around, and it's like, it's the same question that I was asking myself. I mean, it's a beautiful animal. It's the one that looks the most like a wolf.
Yeah.
If I lived in a country that was cold, I think I would want a husky. There's two kind of dogs I would want, a husky or a beagle. But a husky, it's a beautiful
See,
dog.
that's the thing. You're saying if I were to live in a country that was cold, and
No,
here
no.
you are in,
Middle of the desert.
right.
Yeah. What about less common animals? So we said gerbils and what else did we say? Mice? I forgot.
Hamsters.
Well, hamsters. Yeah, I'm sorry. I used to have an iguana,
Oh.
but I did. But she
Don't they
her
live
life
forever?
was short. Was
But
that?
aren't they supposed to live a long time?
That one
They don't have
didn't.
to turn into-
They're supposed to.
That one didn't.
Don't make us have cry.
Yeah.
on the podcast. That's
You know,
cool.
her,
I don't wanna
actually,
dig any
her
deeper.
name was Xuxa. She was named
Xuxa?
Xuxa. She was named after the Brazilian.
After Xuxa?
Yeah, after Xuxa from Brazil.
Wow, that
She
is
was a
great.
big thing back then in Israel.
I found out that Xuxa was a thing last year when I came here, and then Ilarie started like playing at a club, and I was like, what is happening here? what is this? And people were like, no, she was huge.
Yeah. So
Everybody knew
for those
Xuxa.
of you who don't know, Xuxa was a Brazilian
TV presenter.
TV presenter, and
Yeah.
I think it was
She
like
still is. She's still there.
she's still active.
Still doing it.
But in the 90s, she was a huge thing in Israel. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but she was like everyone knew Xuxa, everyone knew her songs.
yeah.
She was this big thing, and so when I had an iguana, it totally made sense to call her Xuxa.
Did she look like an iguana?
No, she was,
the Brazilian
she was very
TV presenter?
attractive. She didn't look like an iguana at all, but
Do you see a certain like character that the iguana had? Like there were certain things that he liked and didn't like you would
Like you see with a dog.
see, it's
Like you
really,
see with a dog,
I think
because-
for an iguana it's really hard because an iguana does absolutely nothing all day long. That's like what the iguana does.
Yeah.
If you have, I mean, maybe when they get older and they're a little bit more mobile, but that iguana she was still small, and she, like any reptile, we had like a light, a heat lamp. She just stood there for all day long.
Bathed in it.
Sunbathed all day long.
Huh.
Did nothing else.
Because my ex-girlfriend used to have not an iguana, but they used to have a bird that was I think a cockatoo or some kind of like small parrot. This very small, this beautiful thing. Very, very, it looks very beautiful, but then you get to know it, and I got to know him for 2 years. He was already old, like 16, 17. He has a character. Like, I thought
Yeah,
birds
they
are
do.
not, they're like, they sit and they, and they take a dump and they eat and they don't. He's scared. He gets, he's happy.
Yeah.
He whistles and you get, you see an actual character behind a very stupid animal, which
Yeah.
birds are not intelligent animals, let's be honest.
Corvids.
They're not.
But
I
maybe
mean, crows maybe. Crows.
I mean, compared to humans, but within their
Yeah.
own breed,
Yeah.
they have enough.
I forgot the name. Not a parrot, like Arara.
Hmm.
The Brazilian one, like really big, colorful.
like a peacock, maybe.
No. Can I Google it?
It's like it was a big bird, right? It's a big
yeah,
colorful
it's
bird.
a big, colorful bird. I just forgot the name in English.
We'll
right
write it
now.
down and then
Yeah, and then
in the
put
notes,
it,
yeah.
put it here. It's a very intelligent bird,
Yeah.
like very much so. Like you were asking about like exotic animals, and I was thinking about that at home before I came, and I realized that I know a lot of people in Brazil who have like different sorts of animals. My sister had this friend that had this bird, and the bird was like so attached to him. She would like sleep on his chest. She would be like a dog, and the birds, they suffer when they are separated
No doubt.
from the people and from the other birds that they love. Also, I think my grandfather had one named Rose. And my mom told me about this because my mom grew up in the north part of Brazil, like near the Amazon, not exactly the Amazon, but like the northern part of Brazil. And they had this bird, and they talk. Like, it's like a parrot, but it's not a parrot. And my mom and her siblings would ask for a feather so they could write with, and the bird would like rip a feather off
Really?
its back and give them. Yeah, and it would ask for cookies. It didn't let anyone pet her except for my grandma. But they are like very
Well,
intelligent.
they say the same thing about horses and pigs as well. Pigs can be we think of them as food actually, but they can become very attached to the owner. I've seen YouTube videos or interviews with pig farmers.
yeah, they're supposed to be very intelligent.
They're supposed to be very, very intelligent, and we know them as food, or maybe not here in Israel, but everywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we just, call this like an animal instinct? The need for connection and I don't know, relationships that they're
but-
just making it anyway.
Yes, but I imagine that there are certain things that you see that certain. If you live with an animal for 2, 3, 4, 10 years, there's certain like aspects of the character that just come out, and that you understand what they like, what they don't like, what kind of food they like, what kind of.
For sure, I think every animal will have its own preferences. It's just the ones that that society is used to. Dogs, cats, like these are we have such long-standing relationships with these breeds that like with these species rather that like we know better what their mannerisms are.
And sometimes it's hard to tell where you're talking about the species having a personality, and then maybe inside the species, the certain breeds have different personalities, and then
Sure.
every
Yeah.
individual
Different
animal
traits, yes.
has their own character, right? And let's say if we're talking about pit bulls, okay, I don't know if it's true because my dog is the most docile animal I've ever met, but some people say that pit bulls are vicious or they're active.
They're not.
This
Stigma,
specific
stigma,
dog
stigma.
does absolutely not. She's afraid of the wind. When I walk her out and there's a gust of wind, she'll curl up and
Or a truck passing by, have this.
everything.
Yeah.
The wind, the truck, a
My dog
person
the
on a
same.
scooter, everything just frightens her.
No, but actually pit bulls, like, they are very gentle and docile, and they are great with kids. They're like really great dogs to have, but they can be bred to be like guard dogs.
Which people
So-
do, and fight dogs as well.
Yeah.
Fight dogs.
So actually let's talk about it. How common is it? I mean, in Israel, unfortunately, it's not common, but it does happen that people breed dogs like pit bulls and terriers for fights. I've never seen it. I've never met anyone who was involved in it, but I know
that
that it happens. And if I've asked the pound where I took the dog from,
They know.
this is quite common. So how is it like in other places?
Probably, like, I would bet that there's a lot of that in Brazil. Like, I would put my money on that it happens a lot, but also it's highly illegal, it's animal cruelty, it's awful, so I don't know about it, I don't know anyone who's been involved in it, but, I'm guessing that it happens.
In the United States, it happens all the time. I mean, there's, unfortunately, right, that that these are happening. There's these high profile cases like Mike Vick and all of this, but it just puts such unfortunate stigma on these breeds like pit bulls and Rottweilers, just because they are physically susceptible to being raised in a certain way that they can fight and that they can kill. That society thinks, okay, now these are fighters, these are killers, and there's no real way to reverse that. I was flying home. I had a work trip last summer in the States, and I was flying home with my dog. And I was like getting all the paperwork together. We called her an emotional support animal so that she could get on the plane. And I was filling out the paperwork for United Airlines, and they're like, is the dog any bit pit bull or Rottweiler? I was like, why is that a question? And I realized, like, it's just it's this long-standing stigma that's been put on these unfortunate breeds that now it's making its way into airline policies. Crazy.
In Italy, I'm not sure. I don't think it's an endemic problem. I would imagine, though, that, I mean, of course, being illegal, maybe the mafia gangs would have dog fights.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that still a thing?
Mafia?
In
Yes.
Italy?
Of course.
All right.
It's huge.
We have to have some stereotypes for movies.
There's different kinds of, we don't want to get into a different, but absolutely, I mean, it's very strong. There's different kinds as well. If you go to Napoli, there's a mafia with a certain kind of name, and it's an organization. You go to Sicily, there's Cosa Nostra, and then you go to Calabria and Puglia. Italy is kind of like a mixed bag of many things. So, also with animals, it's the same thing. I mean, I would not presume to know what kind of dogs in the south people get, but I know in the north, where I come from, in Milano, and or as the same thing. It's not an endemic from what I know, but Italy is a big country. Many things can happen. So once in a while you'll see, like on the newspaper, a headline with dogs. 2 dogs died. 1 person got charged with abuse against animals. So I don't know. Maybe Hong Kong.
I don't think Hong Kong has that many dog fighting in general, because it's harder to hide that kind of thing in a very crowded city, especially because it's a small place. It's almost 7.5 million people in a place slightly larger than Tel Aviv. So, but I do think that there are many other types, like other animal fighting that goes on, like chickens or insects even sometimes.
Really?
Insects.
Wait, talk about that. That's really interesting.
Well, traditionally in China they have cricket fights. 2 crickets in a
This is
cage.
crazy.
Is that considered as
Cruelty? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why not?
Of course, yes, but
But it, like under the eyes of the law, I guess you're asking, right?
That's what my-
I guess
that's my
under the eyes
question.
of the law, it's less. It's seen as a lesser kind of.
I can't imagine like a cricket fight being busted open by
I guess the
by
law has,
cops.
being
legally,
fine.
it's more of an issue of the betting on that. 'cause
Exactly.
Right,
it's-
sure.
Right.
But yeah, we do. I know that in Hong Kong, the cruelty to animals is not so much. Well, it's just in the circles I'm in. I used to play airsoft in Hong Kong, and sometimes airsoft is like BB guns, but slightly safer in me. And I know that there were videos circulating on people getting arrested for testing BB guns on dogs and stuff like that. It's absolutely atrocious, like appalling kind of. But there was a video of like a chained dog just being shot at. It's just.
And just to address like kind of the white
Sorry to be
elephant.
the downer.
No, it's
here.
okay.
Yeah,
It's very interesting. Just to address kind of the white elephant in the room, because I know in China there's some places where they actually eat dogs.
Well, I think we've addressed that already. Just like we've talked about how people in this country or in the world see pigs as food. It's just the same in parts of China where they see dogs as food.
Absolutely.
rather than pets.
Absolutely. I think it's the same as if you go to India and you see cows in the street. No one would think to eat a cow because I think they look
So
at the
it's
cow
our pet.
the way we look at dogs, or even if it's a stray dog, you wouldn't think to take it home and cook it.
That's exactly the part of the cultural differences we're talking about. Here.
Absolutely.
It's like, I mean, I don't agree with it.
But is it
But it's
is it
cultural
common
difference.
in
it's not as common as I think people make it out to be.
Mhm.
Just go to China and buy a dog to eat or something.
Yeah.
You see them.
No, of course.
I think it's northern. Don't quote me on this. I think it's mostly in northern parts of China that is that you get this kind of dog food markets. There is the dog meat festival at
Mhm.
parts of China like
But
that.
What is it said to taste like?
I don't know. I haven't tasted it.
No.
I haven't heard of it. It doesn't interest me. I try to avoid it as much as I can.
Why is it the fact? Because of poverty, so dogs are an abundant source of meat, and if you have no
Are
money
they cheap?
to buy,
Are they? You know,
I really think it's the
I
same
don't
as
know.
as we would look at a goat or a chicken. I remember years ago when they brought in a lot of workers from Thailand to work in agriculture in Israel, and they would catch a dog and eat it, and not because they're cruel people or they have nothing to eat or things like that. Because to them, just as if you
It's
if
kind
you
of
move to
obvious.
another country where there's I don't know goats just running around and you see a goat and you don't think it belongs to anyone, and you're used to eating goats,
you eat a goat.
you would eat that goat, yeah. And I'm not being judgmental. I really think it is a cultural difference.
all a matter of perspective.
It's all a matter of perspective,
for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah, I talked to one Korean a long time ago, and I said something about like, I've heard that in Korea they eat dogs, and the person was like, but it's not like the cute dogs that they're ugly dogs. And, like, it's for food. And I don't know if it was a joke or not.
I don't think it's
Maybe.
a joke.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, the cute dogs go to the rich families.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it was like a different breed, or that's it. Like it's a kind of dog that they see as, how do you call like farm animals? Or
yeah. Well, I mean,
So-
they're really,
Livestock.
it's like
Livestock.
it's a spectrum,
Yeah.
from animals that you would never think to eat, and then it slowly becomes more acceptable. And every country, every culture, they put the line different in a
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
place. Some places a horse is a
People eat
More-
camels here, in some places.
yeah.
They
yeah.
do?
There's- yeah, Bedouins eat camels, right?
I think some eat camels, and then for others they don't eat the camel because it's considered.
It's
it's like
Yeah.
it's
They're
more.
sick. Yeah.
It's a transportation method.
Mhm.
It's it's
It's like, why are you eating my car?
Mhm.
it's a whole new version of dude, where's my car?
I ate it.
Well, let's talk about service animals. All right, you mentioned having animals as you call it emotional support animal.
Yeah, it's the special distinction that's not quite service related.
Yes.
They don't serve a function, but other than to.
I
Emotional
remember
support,
yes, exactly.
going into the state when last time I was in the States. It was San Diego and New York, and you could see dogs everywhere. Not by quantity of dogs, but just because people could get their dogs into pretty much every place. Like we talked about Tel Aviv being a very dog-friendly city. I think in the U.S., if your animal is considered an emotional support animal, it's like a seeing eye dog.
Mhm.
As it has the same kind of pass. It goes everywhere a seeing eye dog can. I think in Israel you can take a dog to almost everywhere except supermarkets.
Some bars here
Maybe
and there.
bar, but
It depends
you can
on-
be outside.
depends.
You can't be
Outside,
inside. But let's see the inside of like bars and restaurants, and then like places like banks and offices. But if you have a seeing eye dog, then obviously you can take them everywhere.
Right.
And we are very unfamiliar in Israel with the concept of an emotional support animal. I can't take my pit bull into a supermarket and say, no, this is an emotional support animal. That's unheard of. But how is it in the U.S.? Like, how do you get your animal that kind of certificate?
Well, I mean, there's a law from I want to say the 70s or 80s, the Americans with Disabilities Act, that provides the legal definition of what a service animal is, and basically it's a very lean definition, which is that it's an animal that provides someone with a disability a service. So that can be in the list has grown over the years, but like let's take seeing eye dogs as like the most clear example. The law states that a business owner or security at wherever you might be can only ask you two questions. The first is this dog or pig a service animal? And you have to say, yes. If you say no, then they have the authority to eject you. But if you say yes, then the second question is, what service does this animal provide? So you have to be more or less specific. And if you're not doing something that's under this list, then they have the right to kick you out. But emotional support is like a little bit different. It's more or less a distinction from airlines and certain service industries that will allow dogs that provide emotional support, like someone who's afraid to fly or whatever.
And they would let the dog in the airline, like on the plane with the passengers.
I don't have to pay any money. It's like I did all the forms and whatever, checked all the boxes and signed to say that they were emotional support.
So I had this conversation with friends like a week ago, and one of them is American, and she said that it's not just cats and dogs. Like you can apply any animal ever. You can be like, this is my emotional support tarantula. I take it everywhere.
It's very true.
It's
crazy. How do you travel with an animal? Because I always kind of
I think it's much easier than traveling with a kid.
Of course, but when your kid is born, you have a certificate of birth, and you have a passport.
But you do like animal passports.
They do animal passports, right?
Yeah.
They didn't. I mean, the application that I filled at least was connected to the chip that she has, from the vet. That if they ever get lost or something, they can just scan the chip and see who's the owner. So at the airport, they were scanning her chip to make sure that it matched up with the paperwork. So that's her identity.
Yeah, I mean, animal travel is a huge thing, and it really depends. Every country has their own. I know about the U.S. that there's a list of countries that if you come from and your dog, let's say, comes from. Yeah. Then
forget about it.
Then you have to be quarantined
like
for
3 months
or
or
something like that, and you have to be checked that it doesn't have any rabies or things like that. Yeah. And there's other countries where you just have to, fill in a form and make sure that you send some certificate. I'm not sure about this. So don't quote me. I think in Germany you have to supply a blood sample, and I think I'm not sure, but I think in Japan, regardless of where your dog comes from, they have to be 6 months quarantined.
It's the same in Australia.
Yeah.
There was a thing that happened with me in when I lived in Hong Kong. I used to be part of the horseback archery team there. And
can you repeat that? Horseback archery?
Yes, horseback archery.
Wow.
Archery.
Okay. You said it so casually, and I'm just like, I'm just seeing you riding shirtless on the horse, with your bow and arrow.
And we participated in a competition in Tibet at one point. We wanted to bring horses that were familiar with us, as well as trained not to react to the sound of a bow the twang of a bow, and or an unfamiliar object being held by the rider near them. But obviously we couldn't because of the different quarantine because in that area in Tibet there's lots of botflies native to that area, and we found out that if we brought our horses there, we wouldn't be able to bring them back because you can't bring things from that area back to Hong Kong, since Hong Kong is a much more sterile area in that regard compared to Tibet.
So I want to touch on that subject. That's really interesting. How common are things like, let's call it, pet shows, pet competitions, I don't know, horseback riding, dog races? How common is that? Where in Hong Kong, in Brazil?
In Hong Kong, in the downtown area, there's a big horseback racing ring, and that's the only type of gambling allowed in Hong Kong. So it's massively lucrative.
And no dog racing?
I don't know about dog racing.
Okay.
I've never heard of dog racing.
No, dog racing you find in the Great Britain.
That's a British thing where they have
British thing.
Well, Hong Kong was a British colony.
It's also true.
I haven't heard of it in Hong Kong, but it's the thing where they put like a dead rabbit on a leash and
something like that. There's the Derby as well, which is this is very English and very British kind of things to do. Dog racing, horse racing, or actually horse racing. You find that in Italy there used to be. Yeah. There's a place in Milano called the Ippodromo, which was very used and now is abandoned. Basically, nobody uses it anymore. But if you think, also the Queen has the Queen's Derby, which is whenever, every year I think or something. There's a few famous ones. I don't claim to be an expert on it, but
But what about like grooming shows or I don't know, dog cat company? I've seen like in the US. In the US, it's an industry. That's huge.
For sure.
US loves pageants of any
Anything, yeah.
anyone like.
No, it's completely.
yeah, that's very true.
It's true.
That's very true.
Yeah, in Brazil, I would also guess that it probably exists because it's such a massive country, and there is a market for literally everything. But
I can guess in the States that it's kind of tied to this old culture of pageantry that you're having, you're breeding these dogs from before they're even born to enter these lives of pageants. So I guess it's just I guess it's kind of ingrained that the same way that in the States it's uncommon to have a rescue dog.
Yeah.
Maybe it has something to do with this this idea that we're breeding them. Yeah.
Yeah, the
I don't know.
I've even heard that there are some like genetically modified cats, genetically modified dogs.
Stop it.
No, I'm serious.
Oh,
Serious?
there is one thing that is happening already that I didn't know, but I had a friend that she was a vet, and she worked in a genetic lab that they do, what's the word, like genetically improvements on cattle, so they can have like the best
Meat
livestock
and milk.
ever.
Yeah.
But they also could clone dogs. Like this is something that may be commercially available soon, of cloning your dog.
This is something I've heard of in China, actually.
Yeah, but she said that the problem is it's very susceptible to like suing and things like this, because people will expect the clone to be exactly like the dog, and it won't be. It will have even like a mark that the previous dog had, and this one won't.
It's basically the same genetic material, but they grow up differently.
Exactly, and it's not like an exact twin.
Yeah.
It can be.
Even in identical genetic material, the spots might not turn out the same. Things
Yeah.
like that. And they don't, and then
Yeah.
Of course.
I can imagine when that kind of thing comes commercially available, though, that the companies that are providing those services are, having pretty solid waivers on their liability for not providing the same exact dog.
Let's talk. Wait, I wanna finish with. I'll ask you, what are the most quintessential common as in stereotypical names for a cat and a dog? Like in Israel, I would say a dog would probably be Rexy, even though that's kind of outdated.
Chuki?
Chuki, Shoko, something like that. Yeah, and a cat would probably be
Mitzi.
Mitzi, even though I've seen all the cats I know have have names like oligarchy. They have like what was your dog's name?
Tobias Afonso.
Tobias Afonso. Yeah, people would call their cat Sir Edward Merrick III or things like that.
My friend's dog is Salvador Francisco Melech Israel.
Oh my god.
That's a big name.
All right, so
That's a big name.
common names for dogs and cats in the U.S. Go.
In the U.S., well, probably Charlie for dogs. Cats, well, I'm not...
Whiskers, maybe.
Oh,
Maybe Whiskers, yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty straightforward. I would say
Or Tom.
Whiskers are furry.
Yeah.
Pause.
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 True.
How about Italy?
I think, probably for dogs it's Rex. Rex like as in king, because it's a very strong name.
If you say for cat anything but meatball, I will be disappointed.
No. It's not meatball, it's spaghetti meatball. No, for cats, not, it's not very common to have. I mean, it is common, but I don't know, Micho.
Micho. All right. Sounds fair
Which
enough.
means-
I guess paws and whiskers, because it's a very most of the names of the dogs and cats I've met in Hong Kong come from people who are expats and not exactly. It's not the Chinese names you'd think of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Hannah?
I don't really know. Like dogs, I think Toby is very common, and Toto.
Toto.
Like, yeah.
Also in
Toto
Italy, that
is
would make
very-
sense.
But nowadays I see more and more people giving funny names to their pets, like food. Like my friend had a cat named Pancake, and my friend has a dog called Porcaria. Porcaria literally means crap in Portuguese. But she was like, she doesn't answer to anything else, so that's her name now. Also, I think it was the same friend. No, it was another friend. Had a dog called Meleca. Meleca is like something yucky,
like it sounds.
Like it
It's
sounds.
Malaka. What does Malaka mean in Greek? Is it Greek?
I can't say it on air.
No, I can't say it on there, right?
Let's head on over to our rapid fire question segment. I'm going to ask an identical question to all of you and just shout out the first thing that comes to mind. We'll start with you, Hannah.
Oh no.
All right. It doesn't have to do with animals. Best place to get local food in your town?
What's local food in São Paulo?
You tell me.
Churrascaria. Yeah, maybe at a churrascaria, but São Paulo is like, it's a melting pot of everything. So
Give us your favorite.
my favorite, I love the very local, very authentic Brazilian ramen that we can get at Liberdade, which is the Japanese district in São Paulo. It's very like deeply Brazilian.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of Japanese people in Brazil. A lot of
Yeah.
Brazilians are Japanese. I think it's like maybe 10% I heard once. Could that be? Or?
No, it's like it's the biggest Japanese community outside of Japan in São Paulo.
Where
It's
did
like
that come from?
After the First World War, there was big immigration, and they just they did very well for themselves, and there is a lot.
Sure.
Like in São Paulo and in the north, there's lots.
All right, Jonathan.
In the northwest corner of Wan Chai playground, right next to the computer mall.
Oh, you're very
There's
specific.
there's a roasted things restaurant. One of the best places to get that kind of food in Hong Kong. It's mostly meats, and but if you go half a block east from that, there's also a wonton restaurant. That is one of the most authentic and oldest wonton in the city.
All right, we'll have all that written down in the description, I promise.
40
Are
pages.
you talking
there.
about street food or restaurant?
Local food. Local food.
So
Whatever.
any normal Napolitano pizzeria you can go to that has a good rating. But usually when I go to when people ask me like when they go to Milano what they want to eat, and there's one specific locale in the center of Milano. It's called Luini, and it's really next to the Duomo. And what they sell there is something called Panzerotti. If you know a sambusa, it's very similar, just deep fried. So what it is, it's a small pizza about this size, rolled up, deep fried,
Wow.
and then you eat it like that. And it is the most amazing.
Intense.
Wow.
It is. It's
In the
usually-
moment, right? And then
Yeah.
you feel gross after.
No, you never feel
No.
gross
No,
because it's
No,
too
I
good.
would never speak
All
of
right.
it.
Never gross.
Yoni?
Well, I'm gonna narrow it down from the States to Philadelphia. If you're in Philadelphia, you must have Philadelphia cheesesteak, of course.
Where's the best place to get that?
Best, well, like the classic ones are on East Passyunk Avenue in Philly. There's the two main rivals literally right across the streets from each other. There's Pat's King of Steaks and Gino's. I prefer Pat's King of Steaks. They have chop steak instead of flank steak.
All right, we're gonna go with one last question. I'll put in my 2 cents. I think if you haven't had Sabich, you've all had Sabich, which is a very local dish. They just opened a new Sabich in Dizengoff. It's the Ovad Sabich that was in Givatayim, and
They opened it in Dizengoff?
They opened one
Oh
in
my God.
Dizengoff, right next to Dizengoff Square. You can get the original Sabich.
Ovad.
Ovad, yeah,
Okay,
that
that's
one.
it. That's the one.
All right, favorite local artist, music artist.
Music artist.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm listening to a lot of Isa. She is a new Brazilian like R&B singer. She's amazing.
All right.
Cantonese music is all terrible.
Zucchero.
Zucchero. All right, classic.
I'm gonna go with the classic duo Jay-Z and Beyonce.
All right.
You're
All
welcome.
right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank my lovely guests As you know, you can help us a lot by liking and sharing this episode or this podcast. You can follow us on social media. You can follow us on YouTube. And you can tell your friends. And if you are currently in Israel and you want to be a guest, then just write us an email or send us a message. You can email us at crossingculturespodcast@gmail.com. And I hope to see you all in the next episode.